Wow. Well, they said the second service was awesome, and I just feel I was walking up the steps here, and the song came into my head. I'm still standing. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's probably what a few preachers have felt in the second service. I don't know about anyone else that speaks, but like when I speak, I don't just speak. I like, And so 4 services in one day is an awesome privilege, and please pray for me, okay? So that I can just bring my A game in every single one. But greetings from Rob and the kids. They're not able to be here in person, but they are watching my stream that they're taking in church in Airdrie because the kids have, again, pray for me for this factor as well. I am now officially a goalie mom. You know, Aiden has a game this afternoon, and I'm just thankful for the gift of the Holy Spirit. That's all I have to say, because people used to say that to me, oh, being a goalie mom's so hard. I'm like, what's so hard about it? And I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. So we call ourselves the defenders because we always seem to get put in these defense positions as the Grasseschi's. But I'm also excited to make this announcement. It's so wonderful to be with you guys this morning. I am officially the happiest political refugee in all of Canada. So we have... Welcome back. Thank you. So, in our line of work, it's kind of like the army. You got to get shifted around. But we were in New Brunswick for a season, and now our address starts with a T. So I'm just so excited about that. We are here in Alberta. And I'm originally from Alberta. I keep reminding everybody that because folks will come up and be like, welcome to Alberta. I'm like, I am Albertan. Okay, I'm Canadian, but I was born in Edmonton. And yes, my grandma ran the Ukrainian mafia in Morinville, you know what I mean? It's like, we're good. She was actually born in minus 40-degree weather under a wagon in the winter in January. And so, I'm a bit hardcore, but I think I get it from her. So anyway, it's just so great to be here, and so much love, affection, and respect for this house. My goodness, anything healthy grows. And every time I come here, you guys are just bigger and more beautiful, and just there's more rooms and little, like I was walking through the hallway, I'm like, oh, this room wasn't here last time I was here. And so it's just so encouraging to see the growth and the passion. I was saying in the first service, you're in an amazing church when you sit and worship and you don't notice anybody else. Like all you notice is Jesus, right? Like that's where you're in a place that really is after his presence. And so I just honor Pastor Craig and Anne in their absence. It takes a lot of guts to give me the microphone when you're not in the room to clean up the mess. Because I'm going to talk about politics in church, right? So, there we go. But very, very grateful to them. Thank you for the intercessors. I can feel the intercession as well. And I do want to say this in the way of kind of more personal opening remarks. My baby girl, I was just reminded this morning, I don't know how this wasn't top of mind, but my firstborn child was dedicated right here, like literally right here. I remember I was holding her, and we had all the mamas were here, and Craig and Anne were here. And so, this place is just forever tattooed in our hearts and in our personal history. So it's wonderful to be back, wonderful to be home. And thank you for all of you that pray for us, that are connected to us in some way. I've got people that come up and say, I watch your show. And I'm like, great. I'm so grateful somebody does, because, it takes a lot to make them. So I appreciate that. And I know some of you have been tracking with the National Days of Prayer. I know there's Life Room leaders in here, those of you that pray on the Life Room. And many of you are also on our civic engagement email list. So I just thank you. We are family. And if you're not on any of those, you're invited to all of them. You can do all of it. It's not an elite club. It's just family. But I do want to share, before I get into the message this morning, which is really a story. I'm going to share a story. I call it Alberta's story, but really it's one of Canada's greatest hits. And it's a story, a testimony that I actually just unearthed myself in a little bit more fullness over the last few months. And I'll share about that in a moment. But a few things I do want to mention. In the way of national updates and announcements. So how many of you have been sort of watching, tracking with what's been happening with the threat of revocation of charitable status for faith-based organizations? So I'm sure Pastor Craig's probably alluded to it in some way, shape, or form. But this is through our Citizen Action Group, which is a faith-based nonprofit that we're not partisan. We just basically speak to different issues, and we just try to give busy people, because we're all busy, right? Myself included, just the bullet points of kind of what matters most as we see it in terms of what's happening on the federal parliamentary level. And we try to give people big, shiny buttons to push that create change, okay? Like buttons that say sign here, do this. And we try to just boil things down and make it as simple as possible. If those of you on our email list will know that we don't send stuff every single day, but we do when things kind of flashpoint and there's a need for people to bring their voice on an issue that matters. We try to serve that in simplicity but power. I've found often the most powerful actions are not complicated. They're just coordinated, simple, and when we all do them together, they make a really big difference. And so we try to serve that. And so recently, we've been tracking with the charitable status thing. Just quick catch up for those of you that haven't been watching. Last December, there was a parliamentary committee, finance committee, federally, that put forward 2 recommendations that would amend the income tax, or would affect the Income Tax Act, that would basically say that the advancement of religion and also pro-life work is no longer a charitable objective or a charitable operation in Canada. And so the recommendations went forward. It's actually put forward by a humanist organization out of BC. Basically, they said, listen, the church has no value, religion has no value, and so this should not be charitable status. And so the recommendations actually got put into the Finance Committee, which is pre-budget consultation. And so basically the Finance Committee, the Minister of Finance then considers these recommendations and has the possibility to run them forward. But this is how legislation is done. This is how policy is rolled out. It starts with somebody pushing it forward and then it continuing to be advanced. Now, what a lot of people don't realize is that this is a lot more than just not being able to give a tax receipt. Most of us wouldn't care if we didn't get a tax receipt, true? Right? Like most of us were like, whatever. It's like, I'm going to sow into things that I want to sow into because I believe that it's a biblical principle. I believe my reward's in heaven. It's all good. And most of us are not those people. We're not going to stop giving because we don't get a tax receipt. So this is not what this is about. Revocation of charitable status, if rolled out in its most extreme format, this is what it means. It means that if Southside loses charitable status because it is a faith-based charity, that you now have to sell this building, you have to liquidate all of it, you got to sell anything that was purchased by charity money, this podium, everything, sound system, you got to sell it all, or you got to give it away to another charity that is not faith-based. Any dollar in your bank account, so if your board if they're wise, they've got a contingency of at least 6 months of operation funds in your bank account. For most churches, like if you've got a $50,000 a month budget or whatever, for most churches, that's going to be somewhere between $250,000 to $1 million in the bank account. Right now, all of that has to be given away to another charity that is not faith-based. Rolled out to its most extreme extent, it also means that whoever is in charge, whether it's the executive director, the senior pastor, or the board, are now unemployable in the charitable sector for up to 5 years. So it's like the equivalent of, so somebody like Pastor Craig, who's given all of his professional equity to this sector, it would be the equivalent of like a doctor no longer being able to function with a license, or what they did to Jordan Peterson, that type of stuff. So this is not just y'all don't get a tax receipts for your $20. This is complete decimation of the church as we know it. Most churches would cease to exist because they just couldn't, or the other thing, it's also a removal of the benefit of not paying property taxes. I'm not sure if this church pays to property taxes, but like a church in downtown Toronto that might not be paying property taxes right now, if they have to start paying property taxes, many of them wouldn't probably survive. And so it would decimate many churches, like literally overnight, and then it would probably take the rest of them, the ones that are like, we're going to figure this out, it would take them probably a couple years to reconfigure. You know, you start meeting in a barn somewhere, which actually might be kind of fun. But it would take some time to reconfigure. And so this is what's at stake. And so we need to, so what we do with For My Canada is we just try to serve understanding, to say, okay, this is what's at stake, and now that we understand what's at stake, give those action points. And so I want to share a testimony now, right on the heels of this, now that you're all like, what? So we've been talking about this, and not just us. There have been lawyers that have been writing letters. There have been articles in the Globe and Mail. There have been lots of media folks that have been talking about this. But the government wasn't willing to actually go on record to say, no, we are not going to roll this out. By the way, something that is worth noting as well is that there's a think tank called Cardis that actually did research, and now has the data, that for every $1 that an individual like yourself sows into a faith-based charity, there is a $3.49 or $3.50 value that gets brought back to society. So it would actually be economic, social infrastructure suicide for the government to do this, because they're not just losing, it's not that, but just that dollar, it's the $3.50 or 49 cents that goes with it. And so this whole thing just is completely disregarding the tremendous value that an organization like this brings to Calgary, right, to society. And so anyway, in spite of all of this, in spite of this type of data, and in spite of all the advocacy, the government wasn't willing to actually say one way or another whether or not they were going to implement this on November 4th. Okay, everybody throw a football to November 4th. It's like, is that like next week or like the week and a half or whatever? Is it 2 weeks? Help me out. I don't know what day it is. So basically November 4th is when we know whether or not this is going to be put into the budget. And so on October the 6th, I was sitting there in my office, and sometimes this happens where I just kind of feel like somebody's got to do something. And, somebody's probably me right now, right? That's kind of that feeling. And so I thought, we've already done TV shows on this. We've already sent out emails. We've already done a bunch of stuff. But we need a little push. Like, we literally got 4 weeks here. This is like, once November 4th is gone, if this is in the budget, it's over, really, unless somebody's going to reverse it. So we created a petition. And I don't know why this didn't occur to me previously, but every time we've ever done a petition, we just let the numbers rack up, and then at the right time, once the bucket fills up enough, we just send the numbers off to our leaders and say, this is how many people have signed the petition. But this time, I remembered that our form actually has this little mechanism where you can get a notification every single time somebody signs the form or signs the petition. Now, I turn the notification off because I find it tormenting. I do not want to get an email every time somebody's signing a petition, okay? But then I thought, well, I can change the email. So then I put the Prime Minister's email in the notification. And I put Pierre Poilievre's email in the notification. And then I was like, okay, how many emails can I fit into this? And I looked up all the finance committee. I put everybody's emails into this, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to, every time somebody signs the petition, all these guys are just going to get a notification. So I made this little automated message. Hello, this is just to let you know I'm one of the Canadians that just added my name to this petition, and then it has a unique ID, right? So like every petition has its own unique ID. So it didn't give anybody's personal information. It just said, hello, I'm another Canadian. Hello, I'm another Canadian. And so anyway, this was on Friday afternoon. I hit send and I go, because I'm really trying to work hard to honor Sabbath these days. Again, pray for me on that one. And so I come back after Sabbath and kind of get back in my desk. This is on Monday morning. And I check out the numbers, and the petition is up to 12,000, okay? So thousands of emails in the inboxes of the Prime Minister, the ministers, all these folks. And this is democracy, guys. There's nothing scandalous about this. Is actually democracy. I wasn't forging anything. You all were pushing that pretty button. Sign here, 10 seconds, boom, right? And if enough people do that, it makes an impact. And so what was amazing is that after I checked that out, I started checking my emails, and I started getting, I have to be honest, some nasty emails, you know. So, some folks can be nasty. Not you all. You all are the nice ones. You're the happy Christians here. But some nasty emails from some of the Christians. Faytene, you need to get your stats right. Because I emailed my member of parliament, and this is the email that I got back. They have no intention of revoking charitable status. And you're sending false information, and this reduces the credibility of the church, and blah, blah, blah. I was, okay, happy Monday. And so I begin to check it out a little bit more. I look at the timestamps. I look at the email that they're referring to, that they're forwarding to me. Because, by the way, when I said sign the petition, I also said, hey, take the next step and also send a personal email to your personal member of parliament, because they may not be on the finance committee. They may not be the prime minister. They may not be the leader of the opposition. So just send that personal email, because I've heard time and time again that the more effort you take, the more impact it has. And so petitions are great, especially when 12,000 people sign them. But when you make that personal effort and you go to the community event and you talk to your representative personally, I've heard some of them say that for every one direct contact they have, they assume there's about 1,000 other people in their riding that have the same viewpoint. So effort is actually equity in the political realm. The more effort you take, the more impact you have. And so anyway, I'm looking at the emails, and this was some people who had actually taken that second step and emailed their members of parliament. And I look at the timestamp, and it is Monday morning. It is that Monday morning. We launched the petition on Friday. And the emails said, there was a few different versions of them, said, I looked into this morning. Are you guys doing the math on this? I looked into this morning, and basically it's been verified that we have no intention of revoking charitable status for faith-based organizations. Prior to this weekend, crickets. Members of parliament were rising in the House of Commons saying, do you intend to do this? Do you intend to do this? We recognize the value of faith-based organizations, but something happened between that Friday and between Monday morning where all of a sudden we're getting all these emails saying, oh, no, nothing to see here. And so I was able then to email back all those very cheerful people and say, way to go. This isn't fake news. This is just how fast it works when we move together, right? And this is democracy. This isn't anything more than that. And we just have this beautiful trust called democracy in Canada. So I want to say thank you to those of you that signed the petition, those of you that are not on the email list but want to be there for the next time around. Because, by the way, even though we got a strong and robust response saying that we will not revoke charitable status on November the 4th for faith-based charities, they said absolutely nothing about the other recommendation, which was for pro-life organizations. And then my counter question is, well, what's the difference? Because there's actually only 3 categories. This is where my tired brain this morning might be getting this. There might be a 4th, but I know the first 3 are charitable status for the advancement of religion, then for humanitarian aid, and then for educational purposes. There actually is no category for pro-life, and so the pro-life charities actually go under faith-based charities. So I'm still a little bit confused here because last I checked, this is a pro-life church, right? Last I checked, the entire Catholic denomination is pro-life. And so we still have some work to do, so get on my email list because you just might have a big button to push tomorrow, okay? Isn't that encouraging, though? Isn't that encouraging? Because sometimes we wonder, what can we do to make a difference? And the reality is, that as the more and more research I've done and the more I've been involved in this sector, the more I realize that the nation goes to those who show up. And often it isn't the masses, but it's the few. As a matter of fact, tonight, I don't have time this morning, but tonight I'm going to be sharing some data about the last federal election. Some of you might not know. Well, let me ask this. How many of you know how many votes determined the outcome of the last federal election? This is the one in April this year. How many of you know? Or does anybody want to guess? How many votes? Those of you that were in the first service are like, 2,000? Okay, anybody else? 2000, okay, it's pretty close. 57. 57 votes determined the outcome. Yeah, but you got to come tonight to understand why. 57 votes. I'm not talking about 57 volunteers. I'm not talking about 57 ridings. I'm talking 57 votes across 3 ridings. I think that's a couple rows here. The other thing I want to mention before I share this amazing testimony is, the model of Christ is prayer in action, right? He went to the place of prayer, but then he went to the place of proclamation. He went to the mountain, then he went to the masses. He went to the Garden of Gethsemane, and then he went up and went to the public square. He went to Golgotha and was crucified in the public square. And so one of the things that we've also served over the years, and many of you have been a part of it, is not just the activism side, but the prayer side. And so we've been leading for about the last 20-ish years, the Cry movement, these national prayer gatherings where I think our smallest one was about 50 and our biggest one was about 7,000. Actually, in 2001, Steve Osmond and the PAOC put 10,000 young people on Parliament Hill for a full day of prayer and fasting. Any of you were there? Were any of you there? You were there? Wow. And so these absolutely epic moments. When COVID hit, we pivoted into online prayer gatherings. But after we spun out of COVID, I felt just gripped. Number one, I felt gripped and convicted that my own kids, Kiana and Aiden, because of COVID and just because of the trajectory that we had been on in ministry and stuff with going into television, that my own children had never, as sort of at the age where they could really digest it and comprehend it, that they had never actually experienced a solemn assembly where they could witness fathers and mothers in the faith, whether they're 29, 35, or 75, humbling themselves in prayer, doing the Bible, crying out in a corporate way, not just mom or dad in the kitchen, though that's even more powerful. It's got to start there, but where leaders were coming together to pray for the nation. I remember how marked I was in different national gatherings where I saw the Inuit leaders and, Kenny Blacksmith and different ones that were leading the way in prayer. And I just felt stirred that though everything we've done in the past is great and you're faithful at every step in the best way that you know how, I began to dream, and this thought came to me of, what would happen if we just didn't do prayer events here and there and the ebbs and flows of this or that, but what would happen if we actually did what the Israelites did? We actually put it in the calendar, right? We actually put it in the calendar where once a year we would go to our capital. I'm not equating Ottawa with Jerusalem, but I'm just saying where we would actually come together at the place that represents the entire nation, the nation's capital, and that we would have a one day every year, put it in the calendar, where we would do 2 Chronicles 7:14. If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray, seek my face. And we would do this. And what if we began to plan a prayer meeting in 2025 that wasn't for 2025, but was for 2075? What if we intentionally began to build something with no expectation that we would be the ones to carry it on, but that we would create something of equity and quality, that when our time here is done, that we can hand it over to the 8-year-olds, to the 15-year-olds that are here now and say, it's your turn. And that they would be able to point back and say, we are gathering because our parents showed us how to do it. They showed us how to pray. They showed us how to fast. This was how Jesus mentored, right? He took his peeps with him. He didn't sit down and give them a 20-point plan, though he taught them, but he always taught them in motion. And so I want to invite you all, because last year on July the 12th, I convened, it was about 300 senior pastors and leaders and politicians from across Canada, and we got in a room inside Parliament, and we had a prayer meeting. And we humbled ourselves and we prayed. We were working together with the National Prayer Breakfast as well. And the presence of God was so weighty. If you could just imagine 300, not on a live stream, before an audience of one. This isn't about This isn't about everybody's eyeballs across Canada. This is about leaders getting in a room because in Joel chapter 1 and 2, it says, blow the trumpet in Zion. It says, gather the people, summon the elders. And we just felt this quickening that, the first group that is summoned. When you're summoned to court, you better show up, or there's a consequence, right? So he blows a trumpet and he says, gather the people, but summon the elders. And we just felt like, the first one, we need to summon the elders. This isn't about, putting on a show. This is about summoning the elders, coming together. And so we got in a room, we laid a foundation, we dedicated it, we had a declaration, people signed it, that we are committing as the leaders in Canada to come together once a year in the nation capital. And every year we're inviting everybody to come. So next year is going to be the second one. There's some cards on the back table. It's July the 11th, the weekend of July the 11th. We're placing it as close to July 14th as possible because of 2 Chronicles 7:14. 40 years from now, when we're in the cloud of glory, I still plan on being here in 40 years, but 100 years from now, that our kids, it'll stay tethered to 2 Chronicles 7:14, that this is what it is. And so, isn't it exciting? See? Things are happening in Canada. It's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. And then the last thing I want to mention really quick, and I'm going to shift into the story. We have to land this at 1:15 again? Yes, okay, I'm going to start talking faster. Is if you are a business person, we have some business people in the room, business owner, business person, if you are a working professional in any capacity, maybe you're a doctor, lawyer, if you are a next generation leader, if you are a data geek, you're one of those people that just lives to crunch numbers and figure stuff out. And if you are somebody that is just a mover, a shaker, a mobilizer, and you feel called, you don't have to be convinced, but you feel called to the faith and government intersection. You feel called to this, or you're feeling pulled to this, or you're at that point where you're like, man, if we don't start to figure this out, then what's going to be there for our kids? If that's you, if I'm talking your language, I want you to go get one of these golden tickets in the foyer on the book table after this, because we are hosting a leadership gathering in Edmonton, November 19th and 20th. To get together in a room, we're going to be sharing some information about the last few election cycles, and we're going to be laying out a bit of a vision and a strategy to continue to flow together and work together as a united community of faith to advocate for the things that matter to us. Right? And so that's all I'm going to say, and go get the golden ticket if you fall in that category. Okay, how you guys doing? You having fun? That was my intro. Those are my opening announcements. Okay, but good news is my message is kind of shortish. Everybody say kind of shortish. Everybody look at your friend and be like, okay, let's go. Second service. Okay, let's see if this pointer works this time. Where do I point it? Do I point it here? No. Where do I point it? Somebody help me out. Jesus? I don't know. Is it on? Okay. Turn it on, the on button. Here we go. Press the big button. Okay. So I want to share a story. How many of you guys know who this guy is? It is Bible Bill. William Aberhart, known as Bible Bill. He was a Calgary boy, but before he was a Calgary boy, he was an Ontario boy. A few of us bounce around. And so he was actually a high school principal, and they got recruited to come to Calgary, but his heart burned for the gospel. And so he actually started one of the very first prominent radio talk shows in Canada. I actually think he's probably the reason why so many people in Alberta just love radio, call-in talk show. He was one of the ones that just created that jet stream. And so this was in about 1918, in the 1920s. He started this radio talk show. Actually, at one point, he was so popular as a radio talk show host that they estimate that over 50% of the province used to tune in to listen to Bible Bill. Isn't that cool? And he started something called the Calgary Prophetic Bible Conference, launched the Back to Life Bible Hour, as I already mentioned, and he gathered thousands of listeners across the province, and it's actually ended up also spreading out across Canada. And so he just loved the word. He burned to preach the gospel of Jesus Christ. He also started a Bible study and a Bible college. As I understand it, at the peak of his in-person meetings right here in Calgary, he would have literally thousands of people come out to his weekly Bible studies. They launched a Bible school out of that, and it was just this awesome, like he was like the Bible guy, Bible Bill, right? Then the Depression hit, and in the 20s and the 30s, he emerged not only as a spiritual leader, but as a leader of social justice and compassion, a political visionary. He was actually marked by an experience he had when one of his Bible students committed suicide because of hunger. They didn't have enough money. This Bible student didn't have enough money to buy food and was so ashamed, was so embarrassed by it, sunk into a depression and ended up taking their life. And Bible Bill William found out about it sort of after the fact, and he was just so gripped with compassion and concern that he began to just dig deep and say, okay, like I'm preaching the Bible all the time, but we need to begin to create some solutions for the poor amongst us, right? And I remember when I was in Africa, I was a missionary in West Africa and Liberia. And when the Lord really drove this point home for me as well, because I didn't know, I was never involved with politics. I thought the Senators were a hockey team. Like my dad played NHL hockey. I thought it was a hockey team. Hadn't even, true confessions of an apathetic Canadian. I had never even voted before my mid-30s. Like I was already doing the cries and I hadn't even voted yet because nobody told me it was important. I didn't know. And so I was not like this political girl, and I was not raised in a political family. The only time my parents talked about politicians was to like curse at them, That was most of my dad, not my mom. But I remember there was this one day in Africa when I got to the point where I would open my door in the morning and there would literally be a lineup outside my front door of desperate need. And I'm talking about grandparents that were holding their grandbabies. I remember this one little girl, baby Co. She was probably about a year and a half old. They never quite knew how old children were. But she looked about the size of probably a 3-month-old. She was just skin and bones, absolutely dry, gaunt. And I remember when I saw her just being so concerned, because it felt to me, I wasn't a doctor, but it felt to me like if somebody didn't intervene, she would probably be dead within a week. And every morning I was just hit with this intense need and devastation. And I remember one night I was in prayer. I was actually meditating on Psalm 72, Canada's, scripture, where it talks about the type of government that Jesus runs. That's a messianic psalm. If you read through it, it's actually a prophetic psalm about the Messiah. And it talks about this king who, in his authority and strength and dominion and massive respect from the kings of the earth, that all the other kings of the earth are coming and paying homage, giving him gifts, that he uses this authority not to store up a bunch of comfort for himself, but he uses his wealth and his strength and his dominion. He will have dominion from sea to sea, from the river to the ends of the earth. It's right there in the middle of that chapter, verse 8. That's Canada's scripture, right? And this is all about the kind of government that Jesus does, that he uses his strength to fight for the poor, to liberate the oppressed, to stay the hand of the oppressor. And as believers, this is just what we're called to do. We're called to do good, right? To advance goodness in the earth through our lives and whatever he's called us to. But this is what William basically started catching on to. It's like, okay, this has to translate into solutions for society. And so he began to speak about solutions for poverty, and he established something called the Alberta social credit policy, rooted in monetary reform theories. Well, it was so popular, and he was so popular and trusted that it took off. His party took off, and you guys know the story. He ended up being Alberta's premier. And so he went from school teacher to Bible preacher to premier, What was pretty neat about this is he actually didn't abandon the preacher post. He actually did both. He was premier by day and he was Bible preacher by night. He kept his radio program going even while he was premier. Isn't that beautiful? Just being so authentic to who he was and keeping that connection with the people. It was powerful. Well, in 1943, on a trip to Vancouver, he died unexpectedly. He had liver disease. He died unexpectedly. But there was a young man that he had been mentoring. Actually, this young man had started listening to his radio broadcasts when he was just a teenager. He began listening to Bible Bill's broadcasts when he was just a teenager, and then enlisted in William Aberhart's Bible school. And they got such a connection that he actually ended up being his personal tech guy. He actually started running Bible Bill's tech department for his radio broadcast, and was just basically around him, serving him, and just being mentored by him through relationships. Some of you might know who this individual is. I'm not sure, but he was a man named Ernest Manning. Anybody ever heard of this guy? Okay, so when William died unexpectedly, Ernest Manning, who was like a protege to him, just came right up in that jet stream, and he actually stepped in, ran for leadership, ended up becoming the premier. As many of you know, I think he might be one of the longest standing premiers in the history of Canada. I believe he's the longest standing premier in the history of Alberta. And the neat thing is that he not only stepped into the role of being the premier, but he also started running the radio Bible show as well. And he was premier by day, following in the wake of his spiritual father, premier by day, and Bible preacher by night. This is the heritage of Alberta. You could just throw a stone back, actually. His son is just up the road right now, Preston. And so Ernest Manning became the next premier. What happened was in 1947, In 1947, the Leduc oil discovery occurred, and significant revenues began to increase for the province and flow into Alberta. Preston Manning stewarded that moment as the premier, but he resisted complacency because right around the same time, they discovered that there was most likely a reserve of oil and natural resources also in the Athabasca oil sands. And so he resisted complacency, and he had a deep conviction as a man of God, a man of the word. He had a deep conviction that those who've been given a trust must be found faithful. And that if God had trusted Alberta with this level of natural resource and equity, and if he was the premier, the one in that position of, it's actually the Hebrew word is exousia. When Jesus was actually tempted by Satan, I don't know if you guys know this, but when he was tempted by Satan and he was brought up into the second heavens, and Satan said, all of these kingdoms have been given to me. All of this authority and power has been given to me, and I can give it to whoever I want. That word actually was the word influence, governmental influence. And so my question is why would Satan tempt Jesus with something that wasn't actually valuable, that didn't actually influence people? And obviously you don't need to have a poli-sci degree to understand that whoever's the premier will influence the people, right? And so he believed that those who've been given a trust must be found faithful. And so he began to say, okay, we need to not only, capture what's happening in Leduc and in other areas, but we also need to develop the Athabasca oil sands. But the province at the time didn't have enough public funding to be able to do it. Because of his faithfulness, not only as premier by day, but as preacher by night, he had a relationship with this guy here, Billy Graham. And so he called up Billy Graham and he said, Mr. Graham, I have a dream, I have a desire, I have a conviction that we need to begin to develop the natural resources of the province of Alberta in a greater way, but I need a capital investor. Do you know of anyone, a business person who loves the Lord, who has the equity, who would be willing to partner with the province of Alberta to unlock the Athabasca oil sands? And basically, Billy Graham, because of relationship, because of friendship, because of trust, basically said back to him, I know a guy. And the guy that he knew was this guy right here, a guy named Howard Pugh. Howard Pugh was a Presbyterian, a devout Presbyterian, who had a passion for the gospel. He was American. That is not a swear word, by the way. He was American. And he was also the owner of an oil company called Sun Oil. In later years, it rebranded a little bit to a company you probably haven't heard of. It's called Sunco. Or Sunco. And so Billy Graham invited him up to Jasper, took Ernest Manning and Howard Pugh for a golf game. They went up to Jasper. They went golfing. And over golf in Jasper, they talked about theology. They talked about their mutual heart for the advancement of the gospel of Jesus Christ, politician, preacher, and businessman, all who just simply loved the Lord. And over golf, they basically shook hands and agreed to begin to explore the idea of developing Alberta's natural resources. They bumped up against each other a little bit in the negotiation because Mr. Manning had primarily the interests of the province in mind, and Mr. Pugh primarily the interests of his business. But Billy Graham stepped in and moderated a few times and said, hey guys, for the sake of the greater good, for the sake of the people, let's bring this over the line. Eventually, the result of that was that Howard Pugh invested $250 million USD into Alberta, and the Great Canadian Oil Sand Project was born. A politician, a preacher, and a businessman. And two of these three are not a swear word in church. All of them loved Jesus, and the kingdom moved at the speed of relationship through them. And because they were willing to get it together, it unlocked the blessing of a province, which then went on to unlock the blessing of a nation. We're not going to talk about transfer payments this morning. We might tonight. And then what ended up happening was because Mr. Pugh had such a passion for the gospel, a whole bunch of the money that he made because of the development of Alberta oil ended up going back into Billy Graham's ministry, funding global missions. Isn't that awesome? All because two preachers were willing to become politicians, not looking at anybody in the front row. The kingdom moves at the speed of relationship with these guys. All because two preachers were willing to become politicians, and all because preachers were willing to be politicians with friends. If there's one thing that I've learned in national transformation is proximity is power. If you want to build a better Canada for the future, get in the room with the people who are influencing it. Sign up to be a member of the board. Go to the policy convention in January if the Conservative Party is your party of choice. Go to the Liberal one if that's your party of choice. Whatever one, okay? I got to be nonpartisan. I didn't mean to use a swear word in church, okay? Just kidding, okay? You could decide which one was the swear word, by the way, not me. I'm going to land this thing with 3 takeaways from the Bible. The first being, many are the plans in a man's heart, but it's the Lord's purposes that prevail. I would wager, I'm not a betting woman, but I would wager a bet on this if I had to make a bet, that when William Aberhart moved from Ontario to come to Alberta to be a teacher, a school principal, that he was not expecting, that he was saying yes to becoming the premier and the spiritual mentor to the next premier who would unlock the prosperity of a nation. I don't know what your end point is, but I know that destiny isn't tomorrow, that the door of destiny is in obedience today. And I've found that very rarely does God tell us the end of the story in advance. He puts a burden in our heart. He puts a desire in our heart. He puts skills and talents in our heart that point to our destiny and calling. But those who've been given a trust must be found faithful. And it's only the faithful that make it to the end of the line. So success is not in some moment down the line that is yet to be excavated, but success is in the daily obedience to the will of the Father. So I want to challenge you today. If you're provoked, inspired, stirred by this story, maybe you feel called to be a politician. Maybe you feel called to be a business person. Maybe you feel called to be a preacher. Whichever you feel called to be, I can guarantee you this, that you're a part of the story. But destiny begins with a daily yes. And if he had never began that talk show, if he had never began to speak about things that maybe everybody thought, what are you doing talking about politics on a Bible show? And yet he was obedient to the will of the Father that was emerging in his heart. And look what happened down the line. I apologize, but I actually got the tag on this one wrong. Yeah, there we go. Psalm 133, verse 21. How good and pleasant it is when good people live together in unity. It's like precious oil. Let's just stop there. You've been given a trust, but so has the person next to you. And the beauty of the body is that not one of us can pull this off by ourselves. We need each other. So I want to encourage you, even today, get with the Lord and say, Lord, who are the people? What are the strategic relationships? It's probably only 2 or 3. What are the strategic relationships that you want me to invest into today? Who are the ones that you want me to fund? Who are the ones that you want me to call on the phone and invite to a golf game? Who are the ones that you've called me to cultivate friendship and relationship with and be in the same room with for the sake of whatever it is that you have down the line that we don't even know yet? He moves at the speed of relationship. And the last thing I want to mention is this. Hebrews 12:1 says this, therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles us, and let us run with perseverance. There is a cloud of witnesses. These men that I talked about today, they did it well. They ran. Well, they didn't run perfect. Nobody does, but they ran. And there's a generation that will be here when we cross on to the other side. And our number one responsibility is to make sure that we take that baton from former generations and that we don't fumble it in our time. That we run with perseverance. That we do our part. That we push the button. That we show up when we can, never knowing what the result might be on Monday morning. That we continue to say yes. And that at the end of our race, we will have a baton to pass on to our kids. I'm going to land this in prayer. And before I do that, I have like 2 other quick invitations. One is please come back tonight because I'm going to tell you who those 57 people were. And you're going to be like, what? Okay. I don't know if we're going to live stream yet. We might decide after the fact. I don't know. We're still figuring that out. And then the last thing I wanted to ask was for help. Okay, get on the email list. You can always unsubscribe if it's too annoying, okay? But I promise I don't email you every day because I don't have time. I have kids. But over the last couple weeks, I have felt a strong stirring to write a book. I haven't written in about a decade and a half. But I felt like, and this came through a confirmation through one of my advisors. She called me a couple weeks ago and said, Faytene, I just feel like you got a book in you and you need to get it out fast. And so I literally just sent this to the publisher on Friday. It's called If Not Now, Then When? Why this moment matters for Canada and what we can do about it. It's not that big. It's going to be probably about 120 pages because I had to write it fast. The next one will be bigger maybe. But we are going to be launching this in the next couple of weeks, and we want to push this bestseller right out of the gates on Amazon so that we can get this message out. This isn't about making money. This is about getting a message out. If it was about making money, I would have been writing books every month. But this is about being faithful to get a message out to people in our nation that care. And so we've set up a pre-order form mechanism. It's actually at the back table, excuse me. But if you pre-order today and pay today, then what we will do is on the day of the release, we will put you into the system. You'll get the book sent to you. It'll help us shoot this up, hopefully, to the bestseller status, because I'm not interested in just writing a book. I want to create a movement. I want to create something that creates wake and creates change. And so you can get this for yourself. You can get some for your friends if you want and be a part of that moment. But I want to land with this. As I was praying this morning, I just kept seeing batons, that last scripture. And if you felt stirred today, if you're encouraged today by this story of faithful men that just simply did what they asked in their time and wrote history for a province and a nation. And there's something in you that's saying, like, I want to be a part of it in this leg of the race. I just invite you to close your eyes, lift your hands. I'm just going to pray a prayer of impartation. So, Father, I thank you for this amazing church. I thank you for this powerful church. And I thank you for all of those that you have called here by name. And Lord, we know that we are surrounded by a cloud. And I just pray, Father, that each one of these ones, God, that you would put the substance of their baton in their hand. And Father, I pray that not only would you give them the clarity, not only would you give them the mandate, not only would you just give them that next step, the next thing to do, but Father, I pray that you would endow them with strength. I pray that you would endow them with a vision. I pray that you would endow them with a yes that is so big that it cannot be overwhelmed by anything else. Father, I ask that you'd give them strength, and I ask that you would surround them with the ones that you've called them to run with in this leg of the race. And Father, for the sake of your fame, and just about fell over, and for the sake of your glory, we just say, Father, would you grant that we would be faithful and be able to pass this on to our kids in Jesus' name. If you have any questions, I'll be at the book table for a minute before the next service.